Welcome to Hope for Your Pelvic Floor, the podcast where we stop managing women's symptoms and start making sense of their bodies. I'm Claire Sparrow, Pilates educator, pelvic health specialist, and best-selling author. And here we talk honestly about what women are told, what the evidence actually says, and how real change happens. In this episode, I'm going to chat with you about research, about the science behind pelvic floor exercise recommendations. This is something that I've covered in previous episodes, and it is covered in the book, Hope for Your Pelvic Floor. If you haven't read the book yet, please go ahead and find it on whatever platform you buy your books from. There's also an Audible version of it. And yes, it is me who reads the book. And so you can listen to me in your ears for a number of hours for the book. But in the book, I do bust a few of the myths around pelvic health research and about why whole body pelvic health makes a lot more sense, even although there isn't a massive body of research that shows that. I think it's really important that we look at the results that women are experiencing with the research more with a little bit of a grain of salt. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. And really, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with research, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. One day I'm evangelically sharing some amazing research, and then on the other hand, I'm frustrated by the reductionist way that research has to be done. It's the model. And then my whole body pelvic health method is based on incredible research into fascia, our connective tissue, the science and principles of biotensegrity, which is the kind of posh word for wholeness and the interconnected regenerative experience of our bodies. And if I didn't have that research and that experience into that area, I wouldn't have created whole body pelvic health, and thousands of women, myself included, wouldn't have made an impact, wouldn't have had the opportunity to restore their pelvic health. So, I really am genuinely torn, and the research that I've applied to create whole body pelvic health most certainly gives me a certain perspective and a bias that I can't really ignore or deny. My view of the world is through this lens, and understanding that level of interconnected, and it's not even a level, that's not even the right word, because it's right down to cellular responsiveness. We are interconnected. We are intercommunicative. We exist this way. I can't look at it any other way. And that bias of wholeness is kind of what makes me even more frustrated by research and as a model, because by its very virtue, it has to be specific, it has to be narrow, it has to be reductionist. Research has to identify a problem and break it all the way down to the kind of smallest part. And for me, that kind of removes you, the woman who's experiencing the pelvic floor dysfunction, whatever that might be. It removes you from the research. It simplifies to the point almost of irrelevance, and it makes it very difficult to truly get the information, the support that women, that you actually need and deserve. And yet we're in this world where quoting statistics and referencing results is treated as a measure of authority and legitimacy. And I remember as I was researching for the book and also back when I was creating the whole body pelvic health method, that I was finding it actually really difficult to find research that was applicable to all of the many variations of the theme women with pelvic floor issues, problems, dysfunction, whatever you want to call it. And I also found it difficult to step up when we're in this world where there is this big bias towards, research and statistics and referencing results being so dominant and loud, when the results and the legitimacy of whole body pelvic health is in the women experiencing results at the front line, if you like. It's more important to me, and that's why I powered through. And I had some great conversations with researchers and pelvic floor physiotherapists and lots of different women in the field who understood my plight when I felt like an imposter. I felt like I need to go and do a PhD. I need to do all of this research. I need to, have alphabet soup behind my name, as Joseph Pilates would say, to be legitimate. And the council of all these incredible women was unanimous that actually I didn't need to go off and do all of those things, because the results of the women that I was working with really spoke for themselves. And yet I still am in this funny, confused place. Yes, I understand how important research is in many fields for many reasons. And there's just an and in this for me. I've said it for years that the Poppy trial, which is deemed a really high quality and widely sourced and referenced trial, demonstrates benefits of pelvic floor exercise for prolapse. But when you really look and dig into it, it's not all that it's not all that it seems. This and many other research out there. The Poppy trial sets 2 points as the minimum clinically important difference on the particular score that they use on the scale, and the smallest change that would actually mean something to a real woman in her life. And the Poppy trial produced a difference of only 1.52 points between the intervention group, so the people who had to do pelvic floor exercises, and the control groups, the ones that did nothing. So it doesn't really clear its own bar in that sense. It was statistically significant, which means, well, it's maths. Essentially the number made sense, but that statistical significance is not the same as clinical significance. And that's where I'm in that okay, yes, research is really important and fantastic, but what is the clinical significance? What's the clinical difference for women? Is it just maths because this trial has been narrowed down into this funnel, and it's only, I've talked about it so many times before, with the Poppy trial, it was only assuming that women were weak, so only gave strengthening exercise. So it was a very narrow window or research that they were doing. So what is important to me, and I think to you listening, is that actually the clinical, the what you feel and the difference to your life is what's actually significant, not maths, not that number at the end of the day. And even broader, that's worth really sitting with, is that when you pull together a lot of the majority of the clinical trials that do have statistically significant results, roughly about 46%, don't meet the threshold for clinical significance. Nearly half of all the positive trials out there may not have even produced a change that the patient would actually feel. So the numbers say one thing, but the patient, the woman, I hate to use that word patient, but that's the terms from these trials. But you, the woman, experiencing in your life the significance of prolapse or the significance of incontinence, you might not actually notice that much of a difference, if any, in your life, in your personal experience. So I share that because when we see these citations for this research or it's proven that, it's not always the same as evidence from a real life, real woman's lived experience of their whatever their condition might be. So, it just begs that question, what is meaningful as a result for women? And I would rather a woman really feel their life was being improved, that their symptoms were being improved, than just the statistics and numbers on a page. It's really difficult. And, I'm not dismissing the need for research by any means. I don't want to come across that way at all. But for me, it's more about different questions. The Poppy trial just assumed the weakness of pelvic floor muscles was the cause of the pelvic organ prolapse. But what if we were asking different questions? We'd then be doing different measurements. Who was in the study? What counts as significant result? And did they personally, that woman, reach that? And it's very difficult to do a research study that truly answers these questions for the women that, like yourself, that want to know what to do to improve their pelvic floor function. And that's where the results that actually matter are the ones for real women in real time, like you, whether it's in your Pilates classes or those of you that are in the Whole Body Pelvic Health membership. You are taking a whole body approach, and that's the approach that is giving you the results, because the research that I apply is not pelvic health specific research, it's whole body research. It's understanding how our body works as an integrated whole, not just a pelvic floor, not that reductionist isolated way. Understanding the science of fascia that's been hugely important, because the pelvic floor, if we narrowed in and just looked at the pelvic floor for a moment, it is highly fascial. It's innervated with so many nerve endings. There's lots of really important supportive ligaments in there. It's not just a floor. It is not just muscles that need to be strengthened. These are muscles and connective tissues, including the ligaments, that interact and interweave into other areas of the body, which means we have to look at the body-wide system, not just this floor piece. We talk about the nervous system, how important it is that we regulate the nervous system. We look at breath, how important it is for the nervous system and for the pelvic floor that we have an integrated and coherent and coordinated pattern of breathing. And that's 3-dimensional. That's not just belly breathing, which you might learn. It's so much bigger than that. I teach breathing 5 different ways. There's 5 different important factors around breathing. So, this is very different to the dominant model of treating one part as weakness in this whole body system, where all parts are actually contributing to the strength of that one part. The pelvic floor is not a weakness. And more than that, looking for the weakness, looking for the one part to fix in itself is the problem. We can't just go to the pelvic floor as the root of all evil, as it is the place that has to just take all of our attention. It's so much bigger than that. And I don't say that to freak you out and think, oh, it's overwhelming. There's a whole body to work on. Actually, I see it as your whole body is a team in support of your pelvic floor. Yay! The pelvic floor doesn't have to do it all. That's a really good positive thing rather than thinking, oh my goodness, this is a bigger problem. It really isn't. It's just so amazing that we have this team, this whole body team that gets to support your pelvic floor. That makes it easier because we're not just trying to target this one area with a faulty question in the first place. When you work from that different framework, you see different results because you're asking a different question. Isn't that liberating to think of in that way? I know it is a lot to think about the importance of research and also to take a bird's eye view as well. So formal research, it tells you what happened in a controlled group under very narrow and specific conditions with a very narrow question that they were trying to answer. Lived evidence tells you what happens when a whole person moves, breathes, and engages over time. And yes, both of these matter, but only one of them has your name on it, and that's whole body pelvic health. This is the method you're here listening to me every week about. This is the method that you are involved in and practicing in the membership. And it's not that I am anti-research. I'm pro thinking about it, pro digging deeper, asking different questions. We need research and we need to also think for ourselves, probe a little bit deeper, look at whether the numbers, the maths are actually real life lived experience. And whole body pelvic health exists because I did both. I looked at the research. I looked at current science of fascia, the research into fascia. I looked at biotensegrity. And when I started out, it wasn't even called biotensegrity. So really looking at both of those things to create the whole body pelvic health method, to write the book Hope for Your Pelvic Floor and create this movement. We're over in our Facebook group where we're talking about pelvic floor exercises reinvented. This is really, really important, and it's why you're here. So I hope today has given you cause for thought, maybe beyond just pelvic health research. Maybe there's other things in your life where you see somebody reference or cite some research and you take that as gospel and run with it. Maybe it's worth looking a little bit deeper and asking different questions and making decisions for yourself. What makes sense to you? And this is a question I pose over and over and over again. I don't want to sit on a pedestal and tell people what to do. I don't want to tell you what to do. I want to provide you with information and different questions and ask you what makes sense for you to do next, whatever that looks like. And yeah, there's just so much to say. I hope it helps you to think a little differently, a little more broadly, that your pelvic floor is part of a body-wide system, not just this one isolated thing that needs to be fixed. It's way, way, way more than that. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this useful. If so, please, as always, subscribe. Leave a review. It just takes a few moments of your time and it makes a significant difference to the podcast's ability to be found by other women just like you who need to hear this message. And as always, if there's one thing I want you to take from today, it's this. You are not broken, you're not behind, and you're not alone. There is always hope for your pelvic floor. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.